I have a pretty princess trying to pet my leg. What he wants. So let's talk about catch-22. This ain't about me. I'm watching some shit go down in the pop culture sphere that sucks. Sucks to know it's happening. Sucks to watch it happen. Sucks to know there is literally nothing that can be done to fix it at this point. Sucks. So I want to be clear, first and foremost. I am not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a moderate. I've gone beyond politically homeless and consider myself politically ABK. ABK is an acronym that stands for anybody killer. If it's corruption, nobody's safe. If it's lies, nobody's safe. And knowing that there's basically zero chance of there ever being enough honest people with integrity from enough places all getting elected at the same time, to all be in the government at the same time, to change laws or make new ones, that whatever it is that makes it so that freedom stays, corruption goes away. That people who are bilking or fleecing or whatever are held accountable, no matter what political affiliation they may have. That there are a bunch of unnecessary tyrannical laws that need to go so that freedom is free. At least as far as the ability to be free, right? Because freedom itself is not free. But I am not a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm not a moderate. I'm not a leftist. I'm not far right. I am definitely in the bottom quarter of the political alignment chart, for sure. I am more than 50% into the libertarian square, but I am not a big L libertarian. I don't want to talk about roads. I don't give a shit about roads. Other people, I don't give a shit about other people, except so far as everyone should be able to be free. I want to be left alone, right? I want other people to be able to be left alone too. I don't really have friends at this point. I have a very, very long list, like 3,000 to 5,000 acquaintances, people I used to know, and a very small handful of friends. Some of these people are just folks I have not spoken to in forever, and I could bump into them and maybe everything's hunky-dunk, maybe they've fallen into a cult pit on either side. It's a very narrow ridge. It's like walking a single pixel in a video game, and on either side is just this steep slope down into a bottomless pit of cult ideology on either side. I'm not saying I'm freaking amazing for walking the tightrope or whatever. I'm just saying it is tricky for anyone. And I'm certainly not apolitical. I do care about a lot of this stuff. I just recognize where the manipulations are. If you back yourself away from the manipulations and everything else, you realize that most of the causes that folks get behind are because they've been encouraged to get behind by some kind of marketing or propaganda apparatus. And of that, there's always just a little kernel of truth to things. So like it was really interesting to see a congressperson asking a bunch of supposed climate experts about what they thought the percentage of carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere actually is, and come to find out they were all exponentially, literal multiple orders of magnitude higher on their estimations than it really actually is. So right there, dishonesty, corruption, narratives, propaganda, or marketing, right? Because somebody wants your money. Whether it's your tax money, the government's printing fresh money out of nowhere, whatever. The reality, the truth, something like, for such a tiny thing, and like the guy said, if he's correct in saying it, that, we just recently went from a 0.003 or a 0.03 or whatever percent to a 0.04. But if we were to get it down to 0.02, plants would start dying because it's not enough carbon dioxide. So there is barely any carbon dioxide in our atmosphere compared to prehistoric times, even though there was a ton more oxygen too. Oxidation into other minerals and things, right? Oxygen reacts with lots of stuff, and our planet is made of stuff. Things oxidize, things oxidate. Some of this oxygen gets trapped, some of it gets put into carbon dioxide, which then gets used into other things. Ultimately, it's possible that the process of life existing and plate tectonics and active geology on our planet will drain our atmosphere of the things that we need to survive. And there may be nothing whatsoever we can do about it, on top of the fact that it may just poof out into space if the magnetic field lets go. Those particles are magnetically confined to Earth, as well as gravitationally. But they rise even under gravity, right? When the different densities, molecules, gas laws, expansion. So the sun could do something, the magnetic field could do something, and none of that we can do anything whatsoever about. And there's all this other corruption and stuff on that angle, right? And no one, anytime soon, in any significant number able to accomplish anything, will be in a position to fix the corruption. And this ain't even about that topic. I'm just saying that's an example, okay? An example of sensationalism, emotional manipulation, etc. I'm putting this out like this because I don't want what I'm saying to be sensationalized. I'm going to put some real context to it. Of the people that I don't really talk to anymore and everything else, yeah, I have encountered a number of people who would fairly be described by L, G, B, or T. I've met a few people that might be into the queer part of it, but I don't want to make statements because everyone that I've known that falls into that category is some kind of a predator. There's an issue with predators, wolves in sheep's clothing, as it were. And I'm not getting into that. Locally, there are people that I know for a fact are registered sex offenders, repeat offenders, who have to stay in group homes away from kids. But they dress a certain way, knowing that these days kids are likely to walk up and ask them a question because they want to be open-minded, because these kids are being brainwashed and indoctrinated at an early age that they must desperately avoid being some kind of negative Nancy about other people. The reality is that someone like that isn't even of that community. It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. That said, I know lots of people that I've met over the years that are just people, and they make the decisions they make, and their sexuality really has no bearing on it, although in some cases it does lead them down certain directions of the people they tend to go with if they're trying to find a community or whatever. It's better that they be able to freely be themselves. It really is. At the same time, any marketing and propaganda apparatus pushing an ideology that is to be encouraged, that more people should be that way, is a sign as well as a contributing factor to societal decay. Not the people themselves. The promotion of it beyond acceptance. The fact that there is any kind of a slope after that whatsoever, be it slippery or not. Because yes, it does lead into things with predators attempting to masquerade, a whole other set of rules and figuring out, and it sucks as well because you've got people that were once on the receiving end of this now being like, for our own safety as well as the safety of others, we now must point that at someone else. That's such a stupid cycle. And again, I don't think there's anything that can be done about it. It's going to do what it's going to do. Flip flop, flip flop, flip flop. I would say, from my own experiences, at least anecdotally, it is congruous. There is consistency in the pattern that the people who are outwardly, publicly, on social media and other places, specifically promoting ideology, tend to be nutbags. But the real people who are of that persuasion, or however you want to put it, are not. They are people trying to live their lives, for the most part, with the exception of some predators trying to blend in with that crowd. The rest of that crowd is not into that. In any situation, you really cannot blame one individual for the actions of another. Even if there is just some superficial resemblance or some demographic category that they intersect with. Now, there is something to be said for someone who is part of the apparatus. However, you're still talking about people. You're still talking about individual liberties that even those dirtbag people working to wreck shit or being so selfish or stuck in a no-win situation that maybe ain't even their fault. Can't deny them their own dignity. Even if your subjective opinion is there is absolutely nothing dignified about the way they comport themselves. That's your right to think that if you want. I don't like the situation being as public as it is with this deal with that Chris person from Mr. Beast's channel. I don't like the situation with the Bud Light. And I've been not saying anything about it because I've been watching this crap unfold and be like, man, this is a minefield of bad takes. I'm not even going to formulate anything yet. And now here I am. I am 13 minutes into this video to get to what I'm talking about. And it sucks. Statistically speaking, the majority of self-ending in the T community happens after the transition. This is numerical. This is a fact. There are probably reasons for that. Like, cause and effect reasons, not, social construct, make this thing up, talk a thing reasons. I am certainly worried for Chris in that respect. Now understand, I deal with my own ideations from time to time. I don't like it when it happens. It's there. And if it's time for it to be the thing, then ain't much can be done. It's my philosophy on death and dying, period. Whether it's however the cause. If it's certain, ain't much else you can do. I mean, you can try and fight, but... And at the same time, I got a real issue with cruelty. As a public figure, it should be expected that you can get a response, a negative one especially, from people. And especially when maybe you've been persuaded to think that more people actually think a certain way than actually do by marketing, propaganda, apparatus, the manufacture of consensus, the illusion, falsified, that more people think a certain way. Come to find out, a lot more people are willing to become vocal these days to say that they disagree, which is their right to do so. It's not exactly healthy, but it's my right. The problem is, if a person thinks that this is what it is, and they go through the process, they talk to a doctor, they get diagnosed with a dysphoria or whatever, they got two options. They can continue to live as they have and work on medicating or therapizing into a sense of denial or finding a way to somehow, I don't think those kind of dysphorias can just be undone. You can't just be like, I am cured. I don't think it works like that. A cause for something like that can be extremely deep-rooted. And at the same time, the other option being progress through a transition. The way it used to be was you would first have to pass psychological screening to be sure that this is not hallucinatory, psychotic, anything like that, that it is a legitimate dysphoria and nothing more. And then to live as the other that you mean to transition to for an extended period of time to get used to it. And then begin the hormones once you're sure that's what you want to do. It's a years-long process. A person who has this dysphoria at age 20, by age 40, will be in a position to get some surgery. In decades past, since the 80s, when this was ever even considered a possible thing, that was how it went. And certainly nothing whatsoever before you are of the age of majority. The whole thing with this was that there were some people living in a world where they could not deal with being what the world would consider homosexual, whether it's a woman who likes women or a man who likes men. That the world was not as accepting, that the rights were not exactly equal, and people had to remain in the closet, as it were. And that coming out of it to tell people this was a big deal. And then we became more accepting. It becomes in line with natural rights. These people still have rights. Everyone has the same rights. Right to dignity, etc. But before that, the entire thing, the idea of not just for some drag show business, but for a lifestyle, to live as the opposite sex, was a solution to a world that would not allow what it considered a sexual deviance. It's part of population control. It's a natural part of evolution. The issue is that things like a dysphoria are typically induced at an early age. If, for whatever reason, a complex wasn't formed, that person may have just been gay. Or hetero. You never know. The issue is that it undermines the previous arguments to lump them all together as one group, one identity, right? Is that you've got parts of this. One part is people that are still, they have every right to explore this until they come to a solution that keeps them where they want to be, allows them to not feel the need to end it or whatever, right? And it's dangerous. They're just there. And this group, the LGB, doesn't quite fit with the T on that angle because most likely the T was induced. It is not an inborn thing. And most of the LG, well, okay, the L and the G for sure, we're going to say those are in all likelihood inborn. And the B, I don't even know how to explain that. I don't think there's behavioral psychology studies that have gone deep enough to figure out what the actual population demographics are because so many people just don't mention it. So, but then you've got all, like I said, the other ones that to me seem like wolves in sheep's clothing, trying to stay in with the flock that it really is not theirs, and possibly predators. So then you've got this unfortunate comparison of these two outliers, one of which is not okay if it's a predator. And the other is these people are pretty much not predators, but they're somehow being lumped in. So then you have a politicized movement versus the actual people that movement claims to represent. And we've seen this over and over with every group that they try and intersectionalize and do all the thing with. A lot of black people do not like BLM. There's Jewish people that don't like the ADL. And there are lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people, possibly even people of the queer persuasion that do not like the big rainbow marchathon protest people. They just want to live their lives and be left the fuck alone. In all cases. The movement tries to push this manufactured consensus to manufacture further consent, which is ironic and odd because what they're manufacturing into is people before the age of consent being allowed to consent to things, which is not okay. It fucks with everything in the culture and the society. Future generations will be wrecked to the point that our entire species is probably already set to go extinct. We barely understand what happened to the Neanderthals. So what I don't like about all of this situation is that Chris is in a fragile spot. Not much can be done in any direction. And it's unfortunate. I think we're going to get some bad news. People are talking about it. You see the situation that Mr. Beast brand was supposed to be apolitical. Now it's turned into this thing. Well, no, this is different. We're just being accepting. No, it's political. It's political. And, you know, it's... everyone's in a tough spot. Like I said, I don't like the attention on it. I don't think that this needs to be a topic of conversation like that. I think if you don't like it, don't fucking subscribe to that channel. And if you're subscribed and you don't like it, then unsubscribe to that fucking channel. That's it. That's it. Don't cancel people. Don't dig up old shit. Don't do what you complain about just to get at somebody else, right? Now, the people on the conservative end of things don't seem to really understand. Some of them do, mind you. Some of them understand the whole thing about symptoms of decay and perpetuation of decay by the people that are symptoms and inducers of the decay. I'm missing the word. But a lot of them don't. And it does effectively amount to a phobia. When you might know that a thing is something that you think is wrong and that's your belief, but you don't understand exactly why. The idea of God hates that is not. Learn Hebrew, translate the book that you're talking from, get the actual meaning. There's even question as to the actual translation of that. Yes, it is a sign of the decay of a society, a fall of a civilization, for that to become mainstream and popular. We're going to see where our society goes with it. It's a pretty interesting place we live in, very different from ones before, but we'll see how different. So then, conservatives also in an uproar over someone who I think has been fairly described as really just playing a part for marketing and propaganda purposes, which is Dylan Mulvaney. That's not to say that maybe there isn't something legitimate there, but obviously the idea I've heard people talk about, specifically a lot of the conversations taking place on Timcast IRL where they refer to arrested development, the fact that this person is presenting more as a child than as an adult. And that implies that this is a pathology acting, not a true dysphoria. But one of the most famous in the spotlight got a Bud Light deal, which immediately tanked that company's stock. But what I don't really like is like the James O'Keefe interview thing. What was the point of that? Seriously. I get where the promotion of untrue things for the purpose of ensnaring children, right? Whether it's beer or whether it's a political ideology movement, either one is not okay. Asking a question about predators who identify as the opposite sex so that they can not be in the prison system, which doesn't always treat people like that kindly. Instead, identify as a woman and go to the women's prison where women are now being impregnated by these rapists, predators. And then the system takes the kids. Mom doesn't get to raise the kid in jail. Those kids are lost. This is a monster factory, basically, right? But I don't think that is Dylan Mulvaney's fault. So why is James O'Keefe following Dylan Mulvaney, asking questions about prisoners who are predators, who are registered sex offenders, who are identifying as female when they're born male, just to not be in the male prisons? What does Dylan Mulvaney have to do with that? What does that matter? So it sucks. I feel bad. They're both in danger. Dylan seems like more of a patsy to this movement, but might be cognizant, a willing participant. We don't know yet. The situation with Chris on Mr. Beast's channel, far more dangerous. This is a person who has had to explore something that they are dealing with, and maybe this is a lifelong conundrum that has been bubbling up within. And unfortunately, the position being, this person really didn't gain any fame or credence on their own. They are part of somebody else's brand. And to make a change that is going to affect that brand one way or the other, and now that it's been brought out, it's like Streisand effect. You can't put it away. You can't close the box now that it's been opened. And I'm concerned. I feel bad. I don't think that's a good situation. So that's about all I got. I hope I've been clear on my stance on a number of things and understand I'm not trying to make I have gay friends, I have trans friends. I don't have fucking friends, man. But I know people that are of those persuasions that just want to live their life. And they should be able to. It's a 100% different thing when you're talking about people who are not capable of informed consent. That's the thesis of it. As long as they're capable of informed consent, they can do whatever. But don't be marketing to kids, because you're opening opportunities for legit predators to masquerade as something like that and then be closer to kids. And that's not okay. Every single step, every single thing that is going on moves toward the destruction of children before they become adults, which leads to adults that are terrible people. Do you want a world populated entirely by that? Because that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to get.